Welcome to the Cyber Call, the podcast by Ride of Boom for managed service providers looking to stay ahead in an ever-changing world of cybersecurity. Each week, we dive into the latest threats, trends, and real-world strategies to help MSPs protect their clients and grow their businesses. Let's build a safer, stronger community together.
All right, welcome, and hope you had a great weekend. Monday, April 27th, last weekend in the month, last Monday of April. And most importantly, John, I just want to make sure that you have something on your mind for Mother's Day and that Erica is going to be well taken care of. Have you already have that on your mind?
Well, I think we might actually be branding. So I might be, rolling around in the dirt on a ranch in Lemon, South Dakota, throwing them doggies down. So
wait,
it's kind
of say branding,
like branding,
Yes. Okay.
Branding.
Yes. I mean, branding has a different term in marketing.
it does. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. See, that's my problem is I do fencing and people are like, on guard. I'm like, no, barbed wire. So that might be what we're doing. Who knows? I don't know where I'm going to be, Andrew, from one week to the next.
Yeah, you've been traveling the world, which is pretty amazing how many places you are in a given month. But Phyllis, any big wish lists for you that we need to tell Mr. Lee about?
Yeah. Well, first his last name's Thomas, but that's okay. But
Lee,
call Mr. Lee a lot.
One of the generals. We'll get one of them right.
That's right.
From
That's
the
right.
United States. So, all right. So,
peace on earth. That's all I want. Peace on earth.
We'll deliver you Nirvana here.
Okay, good.
There we go.
All right. So before we get into today, just wanted to do a little bit of banter. Interesting thing that we were talking about a little bit before we started. Let me just bring this up for you all, and I'll put the URL in chat momentarily. But just recently published by Mandiant. They do a great job, by the way, Google Threat Intel. Talking about this new threat actor they identified as UNC 6692. John, as we were talking about, and why I wanted to show it to MSPs because, and I've talked about this repetitively, I really feel that we have got to be on the lookout for this for our customers and or internally, because obviously this is what put MGM upside down, where I'm headed momentarily a few years back. But this help desk impersonation, and what I was saying, John, is that's in particularly interesting is not that their tactics were like that we hadn't heard about these tactics before, like you're getting hammered by spam and here's the help desk to the rescue. And we'll use Teams to notify you that we're here on the Trojan, the white knight, to help you. But it's how they go about then getting installations into browsers, and really do a novel job, I think, of making sure they're doing as best as they can to avoid any security alarms, right? For lack of a better detection, for lack of a better word. Do you attribute the lack of novelty, but the speed at which they're doing and pulling all these things together? Are they leveraging, do you think, AI for, hey, could we do all of these things this way or that way?
I can't see them not using AI at this stage. Like working with all the models and the things that we're pulling down and playing with on Hugging Face. We talked about it last week. Mythos is not some magical thing that only exists with Anthropic. It's everybody can have like some level of that capability, as some percentage. Mm-hmm. And anybody that's in the offensive arena right now that's not using any form of AI is completely done. They're just out. And a lot of the threat actors, they're really good at efficiency, right? Even though there has been more advanced tactics they could use, they're only as advanced as they need to be. And right now, to keep up in the market space of crime, you have to be much faster, especially the post-exploitation activities. And that's what we're seeing here. And also, you're seeing a reflection in the browser as the new endpoint, and then basically saying, no, that's not right. Identity is the new endpoint. And that's far more difficult for organizations to protect against.
Interesting. So, Neil, what are you seeing? You mentioned some pivots you've already done at the enterprise in terms of what what people are adopting in terms of their AI stack. But what do you hear in this area? Do the security teams, or have you kind of, now that you're really focused in on, AI, you still have a heartbeat and pulse there?
Well, the space is moving pretty fast, so anything that I share with you today will be probably obsolete within 2-3 months. But there is a general pattern or trend that I've seen at the enterprise level, which is moving from the more pedestrian usage of these large language models. Think of it as the traditional chatbot, to tool calling, to persistent type of activity, to full-fledged agents, a fleet of agents. So there's this progression that many organizations are moving towards, and I suspect that many of the folks that the MSPs are dealing with are probably still applying these agents at the more pedestrian, like just chatbot type of use cases. But I think every MSP should be ready for organizations that are starting to progress through those stages, moving towards tool use, moving towards more persistent agents, moving eventually towards managing whole fleets. And so those who've been fairly progressive in this front have probably already experienced this. And I would say MSPs, you should already be kind of moving ahead, at least one step ahead of your clients and customers.
Yeah. One other question I do have, Sunil. I was on with like probably a Fortune 30, Fortune 50 company. And I did ask, so corporate wide, do you see can you point to one AI initiative corporate wide that has been successfully deployed? And the answer was no. And this was a company that has blank check, to throw at AI, and they are. But the use cases still seem to be, nuanced, and departmental and things of that nature. Do you think we're going to figure it out at a corporate, level? Mm-hmm. And what do you think some of the barriers are still to have that happen?
Yeah, so I think one way to think about this is an AI system that helps an individual become 10 times more productive doesn't necessarily make the organization 10 times more productive. So I've told people you should really consider every person now to be empowered with AI tools, and thus they can be 10 times more productive. But imagine now you've hired 10 times the number of people in your organization. So if you're in a 300-person organization, it's now a 3,000-person organization. Your organization won't necessarily reap the benefits of a 3,000-person organization if you're organized still as a 300-person organization. So in many ways, the challenge that I think many enterprises face is how will you reorg, even if you have the exact same people headcount, how would you reorg to be able to tap into this massive new capability, this new workforce that you now have available to you? And if folks haven't really thought through the organizational redesign, then I think that's one of the reasons why we're not seeing necessarily the 10 times benefit at the organizational level.
That's really interesting. Really, really cool. Phyllis, just I'm curious for you, are you get tapped in by enterprises to help with the controls and certainly the SLTTs. What's the vibe that you're hearing these days?
Yeah, sure. I think there's just a lot of fear.
Really?
I mean, really, just like, Mythos struck a lot of fear into everybody. And it's also, which, I'm glad we're going to talk about the paper, because in it says back to the basics, which, of course, is always my core messaging, and it stands still true with AI. And I think a lot of it is, the governance, but the fear of loss of privacy is what we come across. Even when we manage our communities, and we have a public meeting, and of course we have our note taker, and people in the communities are like, well, I don't want that note taker. I don't want that statement attributed to me per se. And then you're going to publish these notes and this, that, and the other. So I think there's still perhaps privacy concerns, which does really kind of lead back to governance, which is who's going to get access to what, and what is it that you're going to do, and making sure, data doesn't get leaked, so on and so forth. But I think everyone's excited about the possibility. But it also, just instills a lot of fear, like, oh my gosh, all these crazy, horrible things are going to happen to us, and we're trying to say, no, it's not going to be that horrible. But there are considerations, and you do have to really put an emphasis on access control and governance.
Yeah, interesting. Chris, last to you. Are you seeing anything novel, in terms of attacks on your IR work, or is it, again, the basics are being missed still, no, oh my gosh, we're seeing this incredibly novel chaining of vulnerabilities together that are being exploited?
Yeah, from what we see, it's still the same. Somebody's identity gets owned, and then they get in through a pretty simple mechanism. There's usually no rocket science. I mean, I could say that I've seen one where instead of the attacker using a machine on the network to stage their attack, they just leveraged the machine that they had and then staged from that machine across the VPN. So obviously, you can't pull forensics from a machine that's not on your network. So that was a little bit different, whether or not that was intentional or not, or whatever the case may be. But and I'm only seeing small to medium sized business stuff, but I think it's just easy pickings. So why complicate things if you can just walk in the door and get done what you need to get done?
Yeah, for sure. John, AI, your IR team similar?
Yeah, we're seeing the same thing. Like the amount of malware that we're seeing insofar as the affection vector is dropping off a cliff, right? It's going into cloud, it's going into identity. And then also we're going right back into exploiting third-party SaaS services and third-party platforms. But Phyllis mentioned it. It's like basics. And not only that, it's going to become so critical for the basics because I think that we got into a bad habit of thinking security was patching. And this is a fight that we constantly are fighting. It's like, well, if we patch, we'll be secure. It's like, no, especially with the avalanche of vulnerabilities that's going to be coming down the line. If we look at it, Mozilla basically confirmed what Mythos had said. Up until Mozilla said that, there was a bunch of people like, well, Anthropic's saying this, but until I see it, I'm not going to believe it. And Mozilla is like, no, it's real. I can't remember. Was it over 200, Sunil?
271. 271.
And Mozilla confirmed it. And that got a lot of people to shut up, right? So what does that mean? Goes back to what Phyllis said. You better know how to firewall stuff out. You better know how to do architecture. You better know defense in depth. You better know how to layer. You better know how to do security when a patch isn't available. And that's what we were dealing with in 2000. That's what we're going to be dealing with today. Get back to that basics and fundamentals.
Yeah, it's kind of like, we always hear this point about continuous monitoring and the patching, but to me, it's more like continuous configuration. I mean, you have to stay on top of that stuff, and you might have to reconfigure something different today than you did yesterday because of a threat or something that was unknown until today. And so and that changes, especially the larger the organization you get from a change management perspective, that throws all sorts of wrinkles into play. So yeah, John's right. I mean, it's super fast. I know that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's pivot to that and setting the stage here. So 2 weeks ago, John came on and we talked about, the Glasswing, Mythos, the Anthropic release and what it meant. And, we spoke about the need for cyber deception. We talked about compensating controls. And I hope we do hit a little bit on that, John, because I think MSPs especially thinking that, that those are two areas they're typically not really good at or shouldn't say not good at. Don't invest a lot of time in, but I see a significant need for going forward with this new way in which offensive chaining is going to happen in vulnerabilities. But interestingly, once that paper was released, in a matter of, Sunil, I might be off by an hour or two, but it seemed literally over the weekend, Rich Mogul at Cloud Security Alliance, who unfortunately couldn't make it today, and your co-founder said, hey, we need to do something about this. Why don't we sound the alarm? We'll get Cloud Security Alliance, our friends at SANS, our friends at OWASP, and it was 80 to 100 top CISOs like yourself to collaborate and say, what would what would a Mythos-Ready Security Program look like? And so I was blown away when I was talking to Rich. I said, how, and I'm going to be my opening question to you after we let you do a quick intro, what you're doing now at Gnostic, but how were you guys able to knock this out with so many people? I mean, if it was one author with Claude, maybe, you know, I'm like, but a bunch of people, that's pretty impressive. So quick update, Sunil, what are you doing these days at Gnostic? And those that may not know you, tell them about Cyber Defense Matrix, and we'll
okay.
go right into it.
Yeah. So, hey, everyone. Sunil Yu. My background is like 30 plus years in cybersecurity. As Andrew mentioned, I created this thing called the Cyber Defense Matrix, and also something that doesn't get as much attention in this community, but something also called the DIE Triad, the Distributed Immutable Ephemeral Triad, which serves as it actually has some relevance to Mythos, which I'll talk about maybe a little later. Anyway, so today, or rather now, I'm a co-founder of a startup with with Gadi Evron, who kind of led the whole effort on this Mythos paper that was released about 2 weeks ago now. Anyway, so yeah, I'm co-founder. I'm CTO of a company called Gnostic, and what we do is we focus on providing a defense platform for AI agents, specifically focusing on coding agents, because that's the one class of agent that is pretty much pervasive across every organization that's out there.
Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway, we help secure them, and we also prevent them from doing stupid things like deleting your hard drive,
or maybe auto updating at night. Maybe you could say, don't do that.
Or updating its permissions just on the fly, whatever.
It's just trying to get its job done, right? It's just like any other human. It'll find some way around whatever security controls you might have. And we're not trying to stop clever. We're just trying to stop stupid. And so hopefully, like in many other security programs, if you see somebody, most people, when they try to do something, they start with stupid and then they move to clever. And that's what we see with these agents as well. They start with stupid, the most straightforward way of doing something. They find that they're blocked from it, and then they find some clever way to get around it.
Yeah, interesting. So Sunil, let me hand it over, because it kind of leads into Phyllis's first question with you there about the brevity or the speed and velocity in which you guys are to do this. So Phyllis, let you take it away.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Nice to see you, Sunil.
Good seeing you again.
So the white paper has around 80 contributors. Like Andrew said, and we all saw, it was turned around in around 48 hours with Rich Mogul over at CSA driving it. So how does that even happen at scale? I mean, to get all those people to work so quickly. And what does that mean about how the security community, how we're going to have to come together like this in a Mythos world?
So the speed of execution in this paper was remarkable. But to your point, I think it has to mirror the speed of execution that we're going to have to see when some of these vulnerabilities get announced. At some level, the answer is also somewhat related, which is to have a very opinionated view and to be very brutally dictatorial in terms of prioritizing what stays in, what stays out. So in some respects, that's what's going to also happen when it comes to vulnerabilities. We're going to have I actually think it's underhyped, the amount of concern that we have around Mythos. And as John mentioned, the Mozilla announcement last week kind of points at how underhyped it actually might be. But that also means that we're going to have to be brutally dictatorial in terms of what we pay attention to and what we're going to say. You know what, this thing is just not going to get patched, or to change our risk calculus around downtime, operational downtime. Because right now we're really hedging towards let's not disrupt the business with these patches. But we may also just need, for some organizations, they're going to have to rethink what that risk calculus looks like and be willing to accept some higher degree of operational downtime for the sake of just making sure that the organization is less vulnerable overall.
I'm going to diverge a little bit. The paper talks about like this collective defense, looking at an ISAC and things like that, which is something, we talked about it a little bit earlier, and we've said it before on this show, is that it seems like criminals are faster at operationalizing and democratizing like new tech, like AI, for example, and the speed with which attacks can come out. How is it that on the defensive side, kind of like how this report was written, like we can come together more quickly? And whoever wants to comment, like this idea of collective defense.
Oh, well, it again required, again, I'm using the word here, dictator. There's a general question, which is, what's the best form of government? And the answer is, it's a benevolent dictatorship. And that was how this paper was generated. We had a benevolent dictator who said, okay, this is going to stay and this is going to go out. There's so much content that we wish we could have incorporated that just didn't make the cutting room floor. But that's also because we had a deadline. Well, essentially, it was a self-imposed deadline, but we knew that we had to get this out as soon as possible. Right. So anyway, that's just, but not everyone likes benevolent dictators.
Right. Some people think that they're the ones that know the best. So I get that, especially in the security community. Absolutely.
And in some respects, I think going back to a collective defense mindset, at the end of the day, the recommendations that we put out there are meant to be adapted to your specific organization. But one type of organization that we didn't really quite address well, actually, it's not one type; it's really three types. So consider like a two-dimensional grid. You have the have and the have-nots. Mm-hmm. Okay, and then you have IT and you have OT. Mm-hmm. All right. So I think we were addressing the haves in the IT space. Mm-hmm. We weren't addressing the have-nots and the people in the OT space. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's the group that we don't that are going to be much more significantly disadvantaged to be able to even consume what we shared. And so this is definitely not one size fits all. And I think there's a huge community for which the MSP community can address, especially the have-nots side of the space. But the OT space is still, we'll see.
Sunil, that maybe can you and John maybe riff a little bit about what you just said? Because, when I think OT, you're talking a lot of the critical infrastructure, right? And that for that not to get addressed, again, 48 hours, I don't sit there and chastise you guys for not addressing it. But I mean, when you think about that the critical 16, areas of critical infrastructure, that encompasses a lot of really important parts of our government, of our country. What's on your mind, and then John, what's on yours when you think about what's at risk here? I mean, I know what I'm thinking, but I want to hear it from you.
Well, it is exactly the livelihood and safety and prosperity of the country that's at risk with respect to attackers that will have a long window of opportunity to take advantage of these vulnerabilities, because many of these environments will just never, or I don't know if I would say never, but will take a long time to get patched. So that ultimately means, look, if you can't patch it, then, especially for OT systems, if you can't patch it, then you should really consider scenarios where you truly disconnect that. And I don't think many organizations are ready to take that sort of recommendation. They may move to that model as we start seeing actual exploitation against these environments and disruption from them. But that's it. I think we know that the critical infrastructure has already been compromised, Volt Typhoon and whatnot. And we know that many attackers are probing water systems and so on and so forth. So those are the things that I think the OT have-nots or just OT in general, that are going to be wholly, not just unprepared, just wholly unable to address the type of things that will come out with the Mythos and Glasswing efforts.
Yeah. So John, your thoughts on this, and does any of the compensating control area help? And so love your thoughts here.
I'm gonna say something that's gonna get me uninvited from parties, but they're probably not parties I wanted to go to. So in the Mozilla article, they basically, it was very optimistic. They're like, we're rounding the curve. The defenders finally have the upper hand. And their entire view of the universe was completely centered around the concept of vulnerabilities, being able to identify vulnerabilities and patch those vulnerabilities. And that was one of the dumbest things I've ever read in computer security. The reason why I'm saying that is because from their view, and like if you look at Microsoft, you look at Linux, absolutely, you're going to be able to use AI to find a tremendous number of vulnerabilities and patch some of the core infrastructure that we're all using. But it speaks nothing to what Sunil was just talking about in OT, right? When we're talking about IT, it's not just Firefox, right? It's not just Mozilla. It's not just Windows, and it's not just Linux. It's not like the mainline technology stacks that you see people using. It's this collection of periphery technologies. And many of those periphery technologies are used in the mainline technologies, and they're not getting patched, right? If we're looking at OT, a lot of those companies, look, if we had the ability to patch and update OT over the past 15 years, people would have. We haven't. And the reason isn't because people were lazy. It was because the company wasn't releasing patches, or the company didn't exist anymore, or the people that wrote the software died 5 years ago. The point is, we have this huge amount of technology surface that is not going to be addressed. And it goes back to Sunil's model of the haves and the have-nots. And in OT, it's a tremendous amount of have-nots. So you're going to be able to pick up an image file for an OT device or software, open source or otherwise, even raw binaries, and allow an AI model to rip through it, find vulnerabilities, and there'll literally be no one there to call when you need it to be patched. And that is what we are dealing with. And I believe, Sunil, correct me if I'm wrong, that's why you're like, we're not panicking enough about this. Because that is a monstrous amount of what runs America every day. Just give you a couple of examples. AS400 systems still run a tremendous amount of the financial district. Solaris Spark 9 systems are still in use for Department of Defense systems. We can go down almost any market vertical, whether you're working healthcare, whether you're working in defense, whether you're doing in other OT and power generation. And underneath the veneer of all these amazing SaaS products that exist is a tremendous amount of legacy technology that's not going to get patched. So now all of a sudden, for years, people saying, well, if the attackers can't get to it, they probably won't, we don't have to worry about it. We can't fix it because we can't get patches. People should have had that on their plan of action and milestones to rip, replace, and update 10 years ago. Now it's going to become urgent.
So let me throw something in here. Maybe start with you, Phyllis. I know we're ripping the script up, but who cares?
My fault this week.
Yeah, not you this week. It's me, John. So, Phyllis, I want to go to the demand that AI is going to put on infrastructure from a power grid perspective. We know it's far beyond our capabilities. We know, for example, China, if we look at China, they're doing, it is what it is. They're doing an amazing job with nuclear technology, coal-fired tech, like you name an energy source, they are so far ahead of us. They don't have the bureaucracy to do these smaller nuclear reactor type environments to get going. We're going to need nuclear energy. So, and we know there's a nuclear renaissance on the way, which to me is, I mentioned this at Right of Boom. If you're an MSP and you're not focusing on the nuclear sector, shame on you, because it's going to be one of the fastest growing segments in our country. That said, Phyllis, if we know that OT is so far behind the curve, like what does that say about, that kind of disparity that we're going to need significant amounts of nuclear energy to power our, AI defense, our defense systems need AI. It's a race. It's an arms race of AI. Yet, OT isn't certainly not ready for the telemetry there. John, you want to say something?
I just wanted to say what Sunil and I said was dark. You just brought us darker. Thank you. You threw it over to Phyllis. Like, Phyllis, your thoughts?
I have to, agree with what's been said. There's always been those systems worked off this assumption that it was separate, that it was not on the internet. And so you have that also, it's legacy hardware, but it's a legacy mindset that, we were always forever going to keep these systems separate so we didn't have to care. They weren't touching the internet. I mean, you know, John kind of touched on that. That's the same for some of these, I'll just call them some high value government systems that they were like, well, there's no threat. We're just going to keep it separate. Right. It's just, but OT and IT, you know, oh, I need to manage that now. Oh, you know what's easier if I manage it from here? I got to do it remotely. I don't want to go there and plug in my laptop or whatever. So we definitely have to update our thinking. It's not easy because, you know, they need their uptime. And so if I upgrade, what does that mean for uptime? So it's definitely this old think of it was separate, we're safe, and now we have to update all of that. And it's non-trivial, right? And as far as like the nuclear power, yes, I mean, it's been something that, you know, we've been talking about forever, but no one wants a power plant in their backyard. I mean, that's the thing, right? So it's also, there was resistance because there's this social movement in the US of, oh no, we can't have nuclear power plants. They're so dangerous. Then of course, Chernobyl happens and that kind of like makes everybody feel like we told you so. Because I mean, we're talking when I was in college, this is like over 30 years ago. And it was like, oh, we should move to nuclear power because, you know, there was an energy crisis in the late 70s, like all this stuff. And it was like, no, we can't do it. We can't do it. And so what's the forcing function? What makes it that you have to go to this type of resource for power because we're going to run out of, you know, whatever, coal, wind, fire, you know, whatever, electricity, power, you need the more power. So I think it's going to be a lot of new think that's going to have to come into play. And, you know, maybe AI is that forcing function. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
And I just want to point out, we have a couple of customers that are either in the research in the nuclear space or some of the few people that are actually building reactors. And at the end of the day, nuclear is still just boiling water, right? So whenever you're looking at OT and how it relates to coal and gas and oil and then nuclear, a lot of the infrastructure that exists is still going to be that legacy OT technology. And we're still on the exact same boat. It's not a matter of nuclear comes out and all of a sudden magically everything's new. Right. They're going to be using a lot of the same infrastructure because we're still just boiling water.
That's my point, John, is that we're going to say like, and we even see the U.S. government bypassing the NRC, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and letting the Department of Energy, because they're so frustrated how slow the NRC is moving that they're allowing. So anyway, last thing I'll say, and again, back over to you, Phyllis, and love your thoughts on this, maybe Sunil, is that, you know, if for the DIE triad, is that potentially the way to go here to somehow secure? So maybe just ground everybody in DIE. We do talk about it, by the way. I don't even think we don't. We love the DIE triad.
Yeah.
And so is that potentially a way to look at this mental model using your terms?
Yeah. So the one of the key points about the DIE triad is that the more distributed, immutable, and ephemeral you make something, the less burden that we have to CIA it. In other words, the more DIE something is, the less we have to worry about security. It's not that security is completely gone away, but it's just significantly lowers our burden. And so there's a couple different perspectives on this. One is instead of having to rely upon a massive power grid, rely upon more localized power generation. And we're starting to see that with small, I forget what they call it, but
small nuclear reactor. Yeah,
yes.
small form factor reactors. Yep.
Exactly. Yes, that could essentially power a data center out in the middle of some place like South Dakota. Anyway, but there's even to take it like to a further extreme, and I'll just give you a really extreme view, which is this notion of ephemeral software. So we have all this software that is vulnerable, open source that's vulnerable. What if instead of having to rely upon the sort of monocultures that we have with software, what if every instance of software was distinct or different in some way because it's dynamically generated on demand? Right. Again, this is a pretty extreme view. It's not. We don't quite have that today. But that is kind of where things are heading, where I can create applications that don't require me to rely upon an open source package. I can point to it and say, use this as a template, but don't actually use any of the code. It may have some of the same architectural vulnerabilities, but it may not have the same implementation vulnerabilities. So the diversity of software I think we're moving to a point where the diversity of software is going to increase, making it the attack surfaces. The vulnerabilities may still be there, but the effort on the part of the attacker to use one vulnerability that or one exploit that compromises many things will, I think, slowly, gradually go away as we have more diversity in the software that we use.
That's really interesting. John, were you going to say something there?
No, he nailed it. But also at the exact same time, complexity is the enemy of security, right? And I think that that's one class of attack vectors is vulnerabilities, right? We still have the business logic errors, the APIs, the implementations of how we set those things up. And then we also run into the issue of interoperability, right? So no matter what, even if the code is dynamically generated on the fly, if you're going to have it interoperate with other APIs and other applications, those clearly defined API pathways still have to adhere to those standards. And some of the vulnerabilities may be in those standards.
Yeah, vulnerabilities happen usually not in the component, but in between components. And that's usually where the vulnerabilities manifest. That said, I think there's another perspective, which is why do I need an API, or why do I need components at all? What if everything I have is first-party code? Again, it's a very extreme view. I'm not suggesting that that's the norm, but that is one path that the DIE triad suggests that we consider going down, because that makes things far more. It lowers our security burden to have to try to patch all the things.
It's really, really fascinating. Phyllis, I think third-party risk management will take care of all this. Over to you.
I just want to get to safe harbor again. I liked the safe harbor conversations.
Exactly.
This is going to fix things like DLP will, John.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Go ahead, Phyllis.
I was going to say, in the interest of time, I probably should hand it over to John.
Oh, it's my turn to ask questions. All right.
Yeah.
So Sunil, the brief says we've moved into a world of containment and focus on resilience. This is a fun question. Does that mean, is that a polite way of saying prevention is dead?
Yeah, effectively. So let's go back to Mythos for a second and talk about what are the concerns. So we talked about its ability to find vulnerabilities. Okay. I mean, yes, that's a problem. With the proper harnessing of older, smaller models, it was the good architecture with a weaker material ends up finding similar vulnerabilities. So finding vulnerabilities, okay, not that novel with Mythos. What was really novel was its ability to find exploits of those vulnerabilities. And I think it was something like 10 times the number. It was just significantly more successful in finding vulnerabilities, where I think they found like 180 some vulnerabilities, working exploits, whereas the prior model only found like 2. Okay, so the ability, like 100 times increase in exploit creation development. There's also this notion of chaining the vulnerabilities. Anyway, the point is that there's going to just be a lot more exploits available. Not enough time to patch, which means, to John, your point, we have to be ready to start putting out fires, right? Things are going to get through. We're not going to be able to patch all the things. We need to get to a point where we can still continue to operate through fires, which is going to be somewhat challenging because I think most of us aren't really equipped capacity-wise to handle multiple fires at the same time.
So I want to ask you a question, though, I think it was about 6 months ago, you were talking about the singularity is within 6 months. You were by the way, I agreed with you. And I think that that's a geeky conversation for people like us to sit down at a table, break bread, and some people drink root beer, and we argue about, 1, do you think we're there? 2, do you think it even matters in the conversation space whether we're there or not 10 years down the line?
So there are multiple singularities, and in the security world, where we've already, well, it ultimately depends on your definition of it, but we have the 0-day clock that Sergey Epp also released that points to this diminishing time between vulnerability discovery and exploit discovery. And it's essentially, I think,
Zero?
I think it's, well, yeah, getting to 0. It was like under an hour, I think, was the most recent frame. So that is one singularity. And by the way, that 0 time frame is supposed to hit sometime probably in the next, if it's not already hit.
I think
But
it's
it would have,
that's a
yeah.
whole other conversation that requires a beer.
That's right. So this perspective of we've hit one at least, point. We're starting to hit a few others in the macro sense as well. And for those who don't know the term singularity, it's also there's the Ray Kurzweil singularity as well, which was supposed to happen in, I don't know, like in 10 years if we get there.
The really bad Johnny Depp movie, which no one should watch. I got one last question. Listed out 11 priority actions in this brief, right? I'm a CISO. I need to start somewhere. What are the 3 I start with next week?
Oh, okay. Well, we did actually have them in somewhat prioritized order, but one of them is just really, so I have my own opinions on this. One of them is just to start running incident scenarios, like be ready to like run a tabletop to see what happens. How would you handle 3 major high severity incidents at the same time? And the answer, I think, would be pretty evident, which is we can't. Which then drives towards, as early as possible, a need for you to start asking for more resources. Now, I'm not suggesting that this isn't just to throw people at the problem or throw money at the problem type of answer. It's really, if we're talking, the paper was really talking about how do you become Mythos ready, not just for the near term, but for a longer term. And so for the short term, though, I think we're just going to have a massive amount of hands on deck that we're going to have to bring to bear here. And when I mean by hands on deck, I don't mean necessarily just hiring more people. That's going to be a challenge of itself to onboard people in the next 30 days, but not in or 90 days. But to really repurpose existing people and say, okay, when a massive fire erupts here, we're going to need help from as many people as possible. And so you start deputizing other folks, and just having that ready, or just having some plan ready, I think will be necessary in the near term. That pushes then towards, again, asking for more resources, but it also pushes towards getting an organization ready as it relates to using AI to fight AI. Find your own vulnerabilities with the AI tools that are already available, but also find ways to start deploying AI agents to help you manage the incidents that are going to come and be better prepared for not just Mythos, but the next thing that's going to come after that.
You mean there's going to be more, Sunil? No. I said, you mean there's going to be, this isn't it?
Oh, yeah, this is the first of many waves, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, find me an IR plan that's structured to deal with multiple incidents at one time. I mean,
well, this is your time, Chris.
No, I know.
This is your calling.
It's exactly right. My head's.
Yeah, for sure. So I just want to address something real quick over to John, because I was thinking about this, and hopefully this is a course we do at Right at Boom with a certification, John, this year. But it would be great if Black Hills developed a course on handling these types of threats when there's no patch available. So when you were on a few weeks ago, I started thinking, you mentioned again, cyber deception, you mentioned, compensating controls. And I think, if MSPs were well armed, right, on how to handle that, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that's a tremendously nuanced class to try to come up with what would 1 or 2 days be? What would be the key things that you would have to do? And let me give an example. So we've been working on a tool called Schism, and Schism takes all of the different commercial vulnerability cloud tools, and we do some really, really cool stuff there. So at any rate, I'm not advertising it. It's not something we're going to sell. But the point is, at the outside, whenever we're running this through our customers, just the cloud vulnerabilities and conditional access policies and caps is astounding. But some of them are necessary, right? Like an example would be Okta has tremendous power throughout an entire organization. Is it necessary? Probably. But if you're looking at an organization, sometimes there'll be hundreds of these conditional access policies, and we don't have the context necessarily to be able to identify them. Sunil was talking about vulnerabilities and being able to discover vulnerabilities. There's a tremendous amount of work that's coming up, and it's not work that could be solved by AI. I was teaching a class last week with the Intro to Security, Intro to SOC Core Skills. And I'm like, okay, run this memory analysis through AI, see what it does. It does a great job. And it's like, now what? And AI gave these broad recommendations. And I'm like, how many people in the room feel comfortable? Like, how do you do isolation? No one could raise their hands. So even though AI is taking some things and speeding up the process, you're still intrinsically going to have humans in the mix. And for me, trying to write a class around that is, let's just say I'm trying to wrap my head around. It's going to be difficult, but I'm going to go back to what Phyllis said. And CIS, this is what they've always had. These things still matter because the basics matter. It's all Lego bricks and how you assemble them.
Yeah, I could have given you recommendations like go implement zero trust architectures. But realistically, in the next 90 days, if you don't already have that almost ready to be done in 90 days, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, that's my problem with that, right? Is a lot of that stuff, it goes back to, sure, it's a super easy thing to say, but the actual implementation is still there as a difficult
That's
thing.
right.
Well, and I think too is that this kind of where it comes into business continuity is what, Sunil said something earlier is there's going to be times operationally you may have to go to manual processes. Before that was, this might happen to us this year. And shifting to a manual process might be your way of dealing with that threat during some time frame while you're trying to figure that out. And so that's where the business side really has to get more involved now too, because you got to start talking through that and understanding. Because a lot of times the business have been spoiled. They've been operationally 24/7, no interruptions for years. And now you're saying, hey, in the middle of the day, you might be down for 4 hours intentionally while we do this. So you need to figure that out.
Yeah, and at those tabletops I was referring to is exactly those kind of scenarios. We have 4 fires that we're fighting. We're going to have to disconnect, or we're going to have to change to some different mode of operation for something. Are we ready to do that? And most of us are going to be, no, of course not. We're not ready to do that. Well, let's at least let's just think through what might need to happen to do that, because it's just better to be prepared. And these. Again, I think it's underhyped. This is underhyped. It's potentially significantly worse than I think what we can possibly imagine. But better to be prepared and be disappointed that we spent more effort to prepare than we needed to, rather than being underprepared.
So, John, did you have something you wanted to add before we move to Chris? I thought you had one thing you wanted to.
No, I had something after the show for the post show for the people that want to hang out for the party. That's the after party. But until then, I'm good to go. But you all should stick around for the post show because I have something really cool. Kind of going with Sunil and Phyllis were talking about and the importance of training in the fundamentals. So.
Yeah, for sure. Chris, over to you, bud.
Yeah, so I have a few for you. So the document says attackers gain asymmetric benefits from AI. Defenders have pretty much the same tools. Why does the math still favor the attackers and the offense?
Oh, so it's not because of the ability to find. It's really about the decision processes, the business processes that we have. And we kind of talked about it already. We have a much higher bar. The defenders have a much higher bar for taking action than the attackers do. I mean, to put it pretty bluntly, let's suppose with 100% probability, I can tell you that this system is going to get compromised. Okay, but it's a business critical system of some sort. And I can even say you got to patch it, and even if I said that, the action wouldn't be instant. We would have to go through this massive deliberation process of, hey, what might happen, and blah 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 blah. Whereas the attacker just presses enter and boom, they're done. So we're at a disadvantage from a business decision and the process for making those decisions. But everything else is otherwise. If we can somehow, I'm not sure if we'll ever get past that, but we need to find ways that we can expedite the decision-making process internally, because that's going to be our main constraint.
So Neil, there's a lot of similarities in a past life. Many years ago, I did my degree in exercise physiology, and I worked with heart patients. And after their bypass surgery, we rehabbing them and working with them, walking around a track, and I go, hey, if someone told you right before your quadruple bypass and heart attack that if you didn't stop smoking, this was going to happen, there's a lot of similarities, because they're like, probably wouldn't have. In fact, I had a guy that I couldn't find until he came back 20 minutes later, and he reeked the cigarettes post a quadruple bypass. But it's human behavior is human behavior, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You go to see a doctor. Have you flossed? Have you, have you exercised every 30 minutes a day? The answer is like, you know what the answers are. You know what the right answer should be.
Yes, Doc. It's awesome.
Of course. Chris.
Yeah, I'll keep going. So it also says that the patch system exploit blueprints every patch. So basically what it's saying there is like every time somebody releases a patch, it's teaching AI how to attack or create the exploit, basically. That's right. A brutal observation. Does it mean that in today's world with responsible disclosure, is that now a strategic liability?
Well, I don't know if there's a whole discussion about responsible disclosure and whether there's a lot of different approaches that people are taking. Some are just saying, you know what? I don't care if you report to us a security vulnerability. It's just going to be reported as a bug and made immediately available for anyone to see. So there's one of the maintainers of the libxml package has taken that approach. Others who manage really critical pieces of software like curl I think Daniel's gone a little bit back and forth on a couple of different things here, but there are way more vulnerabilities than maintainers are going to be able to even fix. And once it's fixed, then one's ability to find the exploit, again, is driving down to zero. So the 0-day clock that we're talking about was really around the speed of finding those exploits. And as it becomes trivial to exploit a vulnerability, we should just naturally, we'll see more exploitation of those vulnerabilities. And that is really, again, the main thing that we were concerned about with Mythos. It's not the finding the vulnerabilities, it's the ability to exploit them that is now done at scale and is of deep concern.
I've got a question, and I just want to throw this out there. It's around crime, right? Mm-hmm. We can go to the broken windows concept of crime, which is problematic from racist overtones and things like that. But I just want to put this out there and see if anyone wants to jump on it. So Neil, I'd love to get your take. Is talking about exploit creation now, anybody with like a MacBook Pro or a decent sized system with some good GPUs can actually use this to write exploits and software. Doesn't that lower the bar for literally like what is the skill level required? Don't you think if we get into a downturn because AI is replacing a bunch of people's tech jobs, that the number of people with those skills and the capability now is much, much, much greater? And doesn't that make it riskier for us moving forward? Or am I off base? It's just crazy thought. More crime.
Actually, I'll make it even simpler for folks who are wanting to go a different path, so to speak. So they don't even have to use the word exploit. They would just say, hey, I need to get into this website. Get me into this website. And a model that isn't properly aligned will go and basically find, as we talked about earlier, you're asking a system to, hey, don't delete my hard drive, but somehow we'll find some clever way to do that just because you've instructed it and it's trying to meet what you're asking it to do.
Model, right? I mean, it's like there's no moral compass. Go. So
that's right. And I think people are going to, I think even innocent people are going to find ways to exploit a system just because that's what the AI system has been asked to do. Go get into the system and it'll find some way to do it. So anyway, the point is that as these models become more and more capable, the ability to find a way, whether through legitimate or not so legitimate means will become pretty apparent. And it's not even, again, being directive to say, go find an exploit. It's just, I need to accomplish this objective, make it happen.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you see at all the security conferences, there's always some side thing with teaching people how to pick locks, right? That's not like and it's become more of a hobby or something of that nature. I mean, with AI, you've given them the ultimate lock pick set, made it so much easier. Yeah.
And now anybody can use it with no practice.
Yeah,
so it's that's great. That's fine.
Yeah. So let me also give one other parameter here, just to give, if I haven't stated it already in terms of it being underhyped, let me just add one more piece that will make it even more scary. So Mythos was able to find these things with basically what I would call no harness or no architecture, no scaffolding. The statement was really, the directive was really simple. You're playing a CTF, go find vulnerabilities in this software, report them out to this report. That was it. That was the only instructions it got.
Don't forget, when you're done, try to escape your sandbox and let us know.
Which is somehow able to do as well. But that's it. The basic scaffolding, I mean, there was no scaffolding. And so the analogy I give here is similar to like the Three Little Pigs. Okay, so the Three Little Pigs, one of the lessons we learn is go build with brick. Okay. If you're a security person, the lesson you learn is it's good to threat model. But anyway, the point is that I can build a really strong house with straw, with really, really good architecture. I could build a brick house that's really weak, poor architecture, and it may be stronger than this straw house just because it's made of brick. But imagine now if I built a brick house with really good architecture. Okay, it'd be much, much stronger.
It would be mighty.
That's right. Well, the Kool-Aid Man might be the only thing that they can stop. But anyway, but the perspective here is that Mythos with no architecture was able to find a lot of things. Imagine now Mythos with with a decent architecture, meaning more scaffolding, more directives, more context management, so on and so forth. And so what it can find, I don't know what Mozilla did. I hope. Well, I'm hoping that they used a slightly more sophisticated architecture, because if they did, then that means that what they're finding is really showing more of the true capabilities of Mythos.
Yeah. I would say, Phil, let's swing it back to you for the last question, because I know it's a good one and relevant to our audience.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So, Sunil, what do you think the number one thing that MSPs should be doing within their own organization as well as with their clients based on the Mythos world we're now living in?
Well, so part of the reason why we had the paper come out the timing we did is because it started to hit boardroom conversations. People were asking, hey, what is this Mythos thing about? So I think in many ways, it's important for MSPs to really let their customers and clients know what this is all about too, and what it really. We don't want to cause too much panic, but we do want people to be ready if and when something bad happens. And so to let them know, let your customers know, hey, just there may be times when we need to do a lot more emergency patches. Okay, and yes, it may be disruptive to your business, but it's necessary. Moreover, we know that we're not going to get all the patches. And so there are going to be some incidents that are going to happen. And it's not because we suck or we're not doing our job. It's just because that's just what's happening right now across the ecosystem. And if there's anything that you all, like you customer, can do to be prepared for potentially fairly disruptive outages, like make backups, make paper backups in some cases of some of these things. Just be ready for a level of disruption that we have not seen yet before. And that would be that's why we wrote the paper, and that's why hopefully MSPs will do as they communicate to their customers and clients what's about to happen.
Good stuff. So Neil, go, Phyllis.
I was just going to say thank you. I'm curious how that'll go over though. If I'm a customer, I'll be like, "What? That's why I'm paying you." You know what I mean? Like it'll be an interesting conversation.
Well, that's also why I think that's why you want to show this paper to say, look, it's not just me saying this. This is what a community of security practitioners are saying.
Right.
Yeah. Interesting times. And again, really thought-provoking, Sunil. I really appreciate you coming on, your friendship, helping, a community that, has a lot of pushback from their clients. And, hey, Chris, we see it all the time. Hey, there's an active vulnerability on your VPN or firewall. Yeah, but we got to keep systems going. So we'll deal with it some other time. I mean,
what's the likelihood?
Nothing much will happen there. So, look, I think us being that we're constantly, talking about how can we look at this differently. Really grateful for you doing that for us, Sunil, John, Phyllis, Chris. We'll certainly be ahead of most because we're thinking differently and acting differently. So again, wishing you all much peace, prosperity, and happiness as we move into the month of May. We'll see you all next Monday. Take care. Cheers.
If you're in the Write a Boom community but not in our Discord yet, you're missing where the real conversation happens. Join community.writeaboom.com to access cybercall discussions, upcoming CTFs, boom camps, and early access to what's coming next. If you want to stay close to what's actually happening in the MSP security space, I'll see you there.